Welcome back to College Football Addiction, the national championship on Monday night. We've got Zach Smith back with us, Menace to Sports. And Zach, if I'd have asked you after the Michigan game, I don't know that either one of us would have predicted this would happen. Although after the first couple of weeks of the playoff, I think everybody kind of thought this would happen. But
Right.
is there some relief that they made it through the playoff, or what's the mood?
You can find your own pain as much as you want to, right? Because there's such a premium put on winning the rivalry game and beating Michigan that almost every win in the playoffs, and this is a spoiled take, but is taken with a grain of salt, because if they go out and just, God forbid, they win by double digits, meaning they just ran through the playoffs in blowout fashion, you're still going to look back and be like, yo,
What the hell?
like that makes it worse, right? Like
Yeah.
you were that good and still lost. So it's bittersweet, but also Jack Sawyer put out kind of an article or a letter he wrote today. I read, and it was really cool to kind of get a glimpse behind the scenes in what went on. You know, they had a players only meeting with Coach Day, and a lot of issues were hashed out. And I think a lot of accountability was called on Ryan, which you don't hear about very often. And if you do, it's usually when a program's falling apart.
Yeah.
But Jack Sawyer was even like, it was for our team, it was really awesome to see Coach Day respond the way he did about, all right, we have two options. We can lay an egg in the playoffs because we're going to the playoffs. That's happening. That's already done. Like, there's no changing that. He said, we can go do what everyone thinks we're going to do in the playoffs. We lost to Michigan, lay an egg, get knocked out, or we can choose option B, and that's go be the best team in the country. And it's really cool to watch them kind of realize that.
Yeah. Coming out of the Texas game, before we talk too much about Notre Dame, do you come away from that game more impressed with the way that Texas played, kind of bringing Ohio State back down to earth, or a little frustrated / concerned with Ohio State leaving some opportunities out there, or maybe a mix of both, but just thoughts coming out of that game?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously we can sit here and say, oh, it was a 14-point victory. We all know what it was, right? I mean, it was a 7-point game, and they're on the end zone's doorstep. So, I mean, that easily could have been a tie ball game. And instead, Jack Sawyer made a hell of a play on fourth down, and it turned into a 14-point lead. But I think just after breaking down the film and really analyzing it, Texas did a great job. Obviously, Jeremiah Smith had one catch for 3 yards. That's just unheard of right now with the way he's been playing. So Texas did a great job schematically to play some zone coverage. And really, you need a precision passer to dice up a zone coverage like Texas plays, the way they match patterns and everything else. And Will Howard didn't have his best day. But I think in the end, when you really look at it, penalties just killed Ohio State on offense. They had 9 penalties. Just it seemed like every drive was first and 20, yeah, second and 15. And so penalties killed them. They didn't block the perimeter well, and Will Howard played a very average football game, and they still won by 14 points. I mean, it just kind of speaks to, one, this game could be a really close game, but if they don't do those things, if they don't shoot themselves in the foot, if Will Howard plays like he did in the first 2 rounds, I don't see how this is not a massive lopsided victory.
Yeah, no, I agree. It felt like every time Ohio State would get something going, they would shoot themselves in the foot with a penalty. Emeka dropped a third down in plus territory that was just like he had 2 steps on the defender. It was just like just little things. Nothing like he didn't have 6 drops, or it wasn't a UGA type, wide receiver performance. But like when a drop happens on third down, it's magnified. Or a penalty happens huge on a 15-yard run, you're looking at 1st and 10 on the other side of the 50, or now 1st and 20. And that just happened over and over and over again.
It really did. And you know what? It felt like you'll see back, at least back in the day when there was just one bowl game, not all these playoff games, and you'd see teams that maybe didn't do a great job staying sharp on like ball security, blocking, tackling, those things. And it felt like that was the case. I don't know what happened from the Oregon game to the Texas game, but I think they need to blow it up and reevaluate it, because they didn't tackle well. They didn't block well. They looked sloppy and rusty. Now, they didn't the first 2 weeks, so something had to give. Something was different.
When you talk about Texas doing a good job in zone coverage, Freeman's talked about this, and obviously with your experience, like maybe this is kind of a cool take, or try to get your perspective on it. They're going to have to play some form of zone, right, at times against Ohio State. But how do you, and not the whole game, like I don't expect them to come out and cover too high like the whole game, but right, how do you pick your spots to do that? How effective can you be doing that when that's not your identity, but you also realize we can't man up against these guys. Like, there's
Yeah,
no chance so like, it's pick your poison, but like, how do you even do that on the Notre Dame side?
I mean, it's tough because it's their identity, and
Yeah.
it's tough to say. All right, we made it to the national championship game, and we are a press man football team, aggressive, load the box, and then you get to the granddaddy of them all. You get to the big stage, the national championship game, and now you're gonna abandon what got you there. It's almost sacrilegious for a coach, and it kind of shatters their foundation, because I promise you, going into the year, he told that defense, we have a great secondary. We're going to play man-to-man coverage. You're going to have to beat us to win. Well, how do you go in the national championship game and say, hey guys, they're going to beat us? Like, we got to do something different. They're too good for us. You guys kind of stink. Like, I just don't think they can do it. Now, like you said, they do play some zone situationally. So it's not like it would be just this foreign country they would live in,
Yeah.
but I think they're going to have to play some zone. And when they do play man, they're going to have to provide some help to whoever, God rest his soul, has to cover Jeremiah Smith, because Texas did a great job, and kind of their style of defense is being that it's a more zone coverage and preventing big plays, which they were phenomenal at all year. You have to be a precision passer to get guys the ball in those zone coverages. And so I think it would be asinine for Notre Dame to at least not have a contingency plan, right? You can't go into that game and say, nope, we're playing press man. Then you start getting cooked and you're like, what else you got? And they're like, oh no, that's just what we do. We're going to keep doing it. Like, that's just idiotic, right?
Yeah. The other thing I wonder is how much pressure they can get on Howard. Like, how much do you? We have talked over this last month or so about how good of a job Ohio State's offensive line has done rebounding from where they were, dealing with some injuries. How do you factor, like, can Notre Dame's defensive line maybe not replicate what Texas did, but do a little bit better? Do you expect did Ohio State's offensive line kind of let you down a little bit in this game? Just thoughts on that matchup.
I mean, I think everyone's inflating Notre Dame's defense, and I think they have a good defense. Don't get me wrong, but I will go out on a limb and say this is the fourth best defense Ohio State's played in the playoffs. They really haven't. Who have they played? They got the weak ass run in the playoffs. The regular season was god awful. They beat A&M week 1. Woo! What a win. Like, they haven't faced a really good offensive football team. Georgia without Carson Beck, and with Carson Beck, Georgia wasn't great on offense. Yeah. Like, Penn State, their receiving core looks like my high school. Like, they just haven't faced Oregon, even Tennessee. Like, they haven't faced a really good offensive football team. And I think you watch that Penn State game, I think the biggest revelation in that game, because I watched Georgia, they shut Georgia the hell down. You watch Penn State, they blocked Notre Dame's defense. Yeah. And I mean, like, blocked the hell out of them. The front seven, I think their D-line is wildly overrated. They lost Riley Mills a couple weeks ago. That's been a big loss. They have Howard Cross, who I think is a very athletic D tackle, but he's undersized. He's like 280, 6'1", 280. So in the run game, they got exposed a little bit, and Penn State ran the football on them. Now, Penn State's running backs are legit, but I think this defense is, I always say on my show, they have fraud tendencies. They're still in the closet, but you're like, I don't know about this team. They got some tendencies,
If I was to offer you a bet that Jeremiah Smith will have closer to 3 yards or closer to 3 touchdowns, would you take the latter on this game?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think not only do I think that they're going to do what they do, and that's advantageous for Jeremiah in the throw game, but also, Ohio, Chip Kelly and Ryan Day came in and watched that film like, what are we doing? Like, we didn't have any way to get him the ball. He's the best player on the field.
Yeah. I thought they did a good job early Will did a good job of just taking what was there. And he went after Trey, he went after, Mecca, and then he did have the interception where I thought, why are you forcing that ball? Like, they were just trying to get it to him so bad. It was just like, dude, just take what's there. Yeah. But Leonard, I don't think Leonard played his sharpest game in the last round either. And so for Notre Dame to win this, it feels like they have to play pretty close to perfect. If they don't win the turnover battle, it's hard to imagine. Now, special teams are important. They have a kick return for a touchdown. Like, big things can happen. But if they don't win this turnover battle, to me, that feels massive. But what about Notre Dame? Like, is there anything they do that is maybe a little bit of a matchup problem for Ohio State?
I think they run the ball decent. They lost their true freshman left tackle. I read today he's not going to play in the game, but they're pretty good up front. They run the ball decently, but I'm telling you, Riley Leonard, I heard from a very, very well-known national analyst that is a big Notre Dame guy. Him and I talked mid-season, and we were talking about Will Howard, and he was like, "Wait till you see what they're doing at Notre Dame with Riley Leonard." He's like, I vomit in my mouth when I see how much they have to protect this kid because he can't throw the football. And it's true. He cannot throw the football. I love the kid. His energy, his personality, seems like a great kid, really good athlete. He can't throw the football. And usually for Jim Knowles' defense, that has been problematic. A kid that's a scrambler, kind of a baller, until they played Dylan Gabriel. And I thought he had an unbelievable plan, Jim Knowles did, to make sure Dylan Gabriel didn't do that runaround shit and beat Ohio State. And it worked flawlessly. So now, without that game, I'm nervous. I'm like, Riley Leonard's going to run for 180. Like, this is going to be crazy. But after watching how they game plan Dylan Gabriel, I feel really good about Jim Knowles and his plan to take away a single threat quarterback.
Yeah. The idea that Marcus Freeman maybe has something up his sleeve, like you obviously saw the punt thing against Georgia, like, you know, it's hard to think that like a trick or some kind of a gimmick is going to be the difference in the game, but we've seen stuff. Like I was just talking to somebody the other day about when Saban had the onside kick against Clemson. Like Clemson was winning that game, I think, until that onside kick. That can either go really, really well for a coach or really, really bad for it. It feels like when you pull one of those out, it is either a turnover or a 4th and 1 where they don't call the offsides or whatever, or it busts the other team for a huge play. I would expect Freeman to kind of have something up his sleeve. Do you think Ryan Day will, or do you think they'll play just a little bit more like, hey, we're the better team. We're just going to go out and play the way we need to.
I think you're going to see, I mean, every team has a fake punt or two that you work on every week until you use it. So they have those. I don't know if Ryan's not a big fake punt type of guy, especially in a game where he feels like he has the better checkers. So I think you're going to see some stuff from Notre Dame for sure, especially if they can't move the ball offensively. They're going to have to do something. And I kind of with you on what you just said. I think Ryan Day is going to go into this game and say, I know we have the better team. We just need to out execute Notre Dame and we're going to hoist a trophy. Now I'm not going to say they're not going to have a reverse to Jeremiah, like ways to get Jeremiah the football. They're going to have creative ways to get him the ball, not really trick play-ish, but just ways to make sure, all right, this kid has to touch the ball. I don't care what they do defensively. We have to have ways to get the ball in his hands, whether we hand it to him, toss it to him, it's a screen. Like the kid cannot leave the national championship game being the best player on the field with one touch. Like that's just, you can't do that.
Yeah. You think Howard bounces back a little bit? Do you think Notre Dame's defense kind of allows him to do that because they play a little bit different style than Texas does?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Texas, you had to be an accurate precision passer to fit it in windows, be on time. That's not been Will's strength. His strength is kind of like, oh, it's man coverage. I'm going to try to throw a great ball, and if it's not that great, we'll probably still catch it.
It's a nice luxury to have.
Oh God, it must be nice.
Me and you could make some of these throws. So.
I'm telling you, I'm at least a 6th-round quarterback if I'm the quarterback
in this offense.
Like, I'll make a couple $100,000.
Yeah. Oh shoot. Look at the quarterbacks that are in the top 5 this year. For the draft. It ain't that hard. Zach, do you have a prediction in this one?
I mean, I think it'll be closer than people will give Notre Dame credit for early. And then I think Ohio State eventually does pull away. I mean, I don't want to be audacious and say some crazy score, but I could definitely see this being 35-21, 35-18, something like that. I think it's going to be a double-digit win. I don't think it's going to be, one of those 41-14, like crazy blowouts. I think Notre Dame's good enough where that they won't let that happen. But you said it at the beginning of this. Don't let Will Howard throw it to him twice. Don't let them block a punt. Don't let them return a kick. Like a couple of those things happen, and you're like, holy shit, it is tied in the fourth quarter. Like it definitely could happen. So Ohio State just has to play a clean game. And enough with the penalties. My God. Like the offsides penalties in a bowl game. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Like it's not like the crowd's so loud.
Well, yeah, it's not just your first one; it's the third one you've played.
Right? It's not like you're nervous. Like it's your third playoff game. It's a 50-50 crowd. It's not too loud. Like stay the fuck on sides.
I think the way that both teams start will be important too. Ohio State in their 2 blowout wins, the game was over by the end of the first quarter.
No doubt.
And if they were to get up big, Notre Dame's not built to come back.
No.
And but Notre Dame kept it close in the first half against Penn State when they were playing pretty god awful, and it gave them a chance to have a shot in the second half. So I think the start's important in every game. But if Ohio State was to get out to a 14, 17-point lead, I don't see a way that Notre Dame comes back. So
no, me either.
Where can people follow you? Where can they find more content and work?
Yeah, so it's menacesports.com is our website. That's where we do all the film breakdowns. Everything's really housed there, but also on YouTube, Spotify, everywhere, podcasts, and everywhere. Just look up Menace to Sports at the number 2. We're everywhere.
Good stuff, man. I appreciate you for joining us. Good luck on Monday.
Appreciate it, man. Always fun.